honestly, I know I keep coming back to this, but that consumer sentiment thing to me, that's something to keep an eye on, that's ticking up again.
Hello, and welcome to Let Me Ask You This, brought to you by the California Association of Realtors. My name is Matt Roberts. I'm the Federal and Local Government Affairs Director for C.A.R. Joining me, as always, is my colleague Mike Falk, C.A.R's public policy economist. And Mike, this week, we want to talk about the C.A.R's press release on the May home sales and price report. That's a monthly report that C.A.R puts out that really gives a snapshot. Well, actually, more than a snapshot, really goes into detail every month on California's housing and real estate market. So, Mike, you had a chance to look at it. You actually helped put some of the numbers together. Why don't you tell us about what's going on in California's real estate market? And we'll put some of those numbers up on the screen to help everyone.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, May California housing market was an interesting time. So the median home price across the state is 900,170, which is actually a little bit down from April and down from May of last year. Sales are on pace now for about 254,000 this year, which is still under that 300,000 mark we've talked about. But unsold inventory is up to 3.8 months, which, it just means that it would take 3.8 months for all that inventory to sell. Median days on market ticked up by 5 days. So basically what we're looking at is a little bit lower sales, and we're still in that low zone. But an uptick in inventory and a slight softening of the median home price.
All right. So, Mike, obviously we do a lot of numbers when we put these out. If you were trying to take away one or two big headlines that kind of stood out to you, what jumped out at you when you saw this month's numbers?
Well, it's kind of interesting. There's a little bit of inspiration in all this information where the consumer sentiment actually ticked up this month for the first time since I think like 2022. It's like the highest it has been. And that means that more folks think that this might be a good time to buy. And when we talk about softening prices and more inventory, they might be onto something.
Okay, so tough numbers is in terms of price is still high, sales are down, which we've talked about, but the housing market doesn't turn on a dime. So arguably some silver linings in there, in that inventory is up. A home buyer consumer sentiment, as you said, is becoming a little bit more positive, that maybe it's becoming a better environment or moving towards a better environment to purchase. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. So, the numbers that you talked about at the beginning, those were statewide numbers, but we actually break it out by counties and regions. And I'm just curious, were there any regions or specific counties that maybe stood out to you because perhaps they slowed even more, or perhaps they even bucked the statewide the statewide trend?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we look at 53 counties, and 19 of those counties sales went up, and some fairly dramatically, like Kings, Plumas, Amador County. Those are three counties where sales were actually significantly up. And I think that you always say the housing market is local, and we are talking about a state that's so enormous, and there are a lot of bright spots, even though the overall picture seems, I think we use the word sputter. But I will say this, I don't mind telling this story. When I was a kid, my grandpa was flying a prop plane that I was in, that he shared with a couple friends, and the propeller went out when we were in the air, and it sputtered. There were sputtering noises.
That's a sputter.
Yeah, that's a sputter. And I remember being like, oh, well, oh God. And my grandpa was like, no, 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 it's fine. And he just turned the engine back on and we kept flying. And so
I
what I'm
love
saying
Midwest
is,
grandpas.
yeah, what I'm saying is don't panic. There's actually some good info here. And I would also say 29 out of the 53 counties that we looked at, the median price actually ticked up a little bit. So this isn't, you know, there's some good stuff in here. And honestly, I know I keep coming back to this, but that consumer sentiment thing to me, that's something to keep an eye on, that's ticking up again.
All right. On that note, we'll go ahead and put a link to the report, this month's report on C.A.R.'s website. Mike, thank you for walking us through this, giving us a good perspective, a Midwest grandpa perspective on the numbers this month. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you on the next episode of Let Me Ask You This. Dan, good luck editing this one, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.